meaning that we have the 2 points, which are Yaakov and Esav. These 2 points of Yaakov and Esav, I'm sorry, not Yaakov and Esav. We're going to talk soon about Yaakov and Esav. About Esav and Yishmael, these 2 levels of Esav and Yishmael are representing the Umas Ha'olam, the 70 nations, and these 70 nations, they are being raised up, and this is barer through the nekuda, through the bottom dot of the segel, which is Klal Yisrael, which elevate them and unvarer them, and through that, Yidden reach a higher level, and instead of being on the bottom, they reach the top. That's turned over segel, which is one of the cantillation marks on top of the letters. And in that process as well, that through the Yidden becoming Sgula Mikol Ha'amim, they become, because of the nations, they reach this level of the higher level of Segel, that they go up from being a Segel to Segalta. So since the nations of the Yidden contributed to this, the nations of the world contributed to this, so therefore their contribution entitles them to benefit as well. They are rewarded as well for this. Now we're going to bring this back to the idea of Machar Chodesh. We pointed out that there's many things in the Haftorah of Machar Chodesh, and even prior to the actual part that we read in the Haftorah, that deals with the idea of triples and threes, because Machar Chodesh is also this idea of the segel, as we're going to explain. So we're holding Ois Daled, 6th page of the Mimer, page Yud, Ois Daled, line 13. The Indian Kosherim Klolos, the Indian, the Machar Chodesh, what we just now spoke about, is connected with the general idea that tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, which the beginning of the Haftorah, Indian Moiled Halavana, the idea of the new month is the birth of the moon. Shalza Amru Yisrael Mainim Levana, concerning the counting to the moon or the new month. For this, the Chazal say that Yidden are distinct in the fact that their calendar is a lunar calendar. V'heim asidim l'schadish kemoisa, and the reason why they do so is because they're compared to the lunar calendar, or they're compared to the moon. Just like the moon is renewed every month, so too the Yidden will be renewed when Mashiach comes. And to explain the advantage of it, of counting based on the moon, the calendar based on the moon, and the idea that we're going to be renewed like the moon. The difference between the sun and the moon is the sun is not something that has changes. Other garnished, either totally or completely not. Zricha Eshkia, it's either rose or it's set. Yom Laila, it's either day or night. So it's either here, the sun, or it's not here. There is no partially being here. As opposed to the moon, initially there is the birth of the new moon. That's only a point that begins in the smallest amount. Even prior to the birth of the new moon, there's a complete concealment of the moon. That's the idea that it becomes empty and missing, just like that Yehonathan told David, your seat will be empty, so too the moon is missing and empty on the day before the Moiled Levana, on the day before the Chodesh. By days, and through that empty, through that missing, Nasa Chakach Moiled Levana comes about following that the birth of the new moon. In such a manner, She'oila Medarga Ladarga. It is going up level after level. The moon is constantly increasing and growing. Until the middle of the month, the 15th of the month, that then the moon is standing in its full state. Val derech zeh ugam b'Yisrael. In a similar vein, it's also about the Yid. Sheyesh bem kama dargis valiyah. So the Yid have many levels and ascents. Ukenisker la'el, like we said before, about the segal, the betchila yeshna nekuda shalamatim nishtei nekudas. Initially, there's the point that's under the two dots. And afterwards, it rises up to be transformed in a segalta, where the upside down segal, you have the dot on top of the two dots. So now the Rebbe in the next page is going to explain the connection with the parsha of the week. The page 7. We could also connect it in what it says, the beginning of the parsha of the week. It says, and these are the offspring, the histories of Yitzchak. Seemingly, we need to understand why does it say and these with the letter vav beforehand? Wherever it says and these, it adds to what was there previously. How does this add to the offspring, to the descendants, to the children of Yishmael that was spoken about before? At the end of the previous parsha, the end of Parshas Chayei, it speaks about Yishmael, his offsprings, where they lived, where they settled, their cities, and so on. Then right after that says, Ve'ela toldis Yitzchak ben Avram, and these are the toldis of Yitzchak ben Avram. So how does Yitzchak's offspring is considered a continuation to, and something that is growing out of the offspring of Yishmael? They're completely different. This makes sense earlier in the end of Chayei, when it says, and these are the offspring of Yishmael. That it makes sense. It's adding to what speaks about over there, the children of Keturah prior to that it enumerates over there, that Avram's children that he had with Keturah were so-and-so, and then he says, and, you know what else? There's also the children of Yishmael. That's a continuation, Yishmael and Keturah, especially if Keturah is Hagar. But even without that, it makes sense. They're in the same category. They're both not part of the Zera that would continue Avram's mission in the world and so on. Amnam Mashakasav Eila told us Yitzchak, where it says, and these are the Toldus Yitzchak. And what is the Toldus Yitzchak referring to? Rashi says that the offspring that it's talking about is what he's eventually going to get to the story of Yaakov and Esav, because usually Rashi is trying to explain, usually we say, and these are the offspring of so-and-so, like it says by Yishmael. So it will say, he had these children and they settled in these cities, whatever. It doesn't say that at the beginning of our parsha, but eventually it gets to that. It starts talking about the whole story, Yitzchak and Avram, and then he goes on and says about them being childless, and then eventually they had the twins of Yaakov and Esav. So Rashi is saying, Eila Toldos is going on what he's going to get to soon. In a few psukim, he's going to talk about Yaakov and Esav. So since Rashi explains that Eila Toldos Yitzchak is referring to Yaakov and Esav, how is it possible to say that Yaakov is an addition to Yishmael? It's a continuation. There was the children of Yishmael, and now there is Yaakov Avinu. How can there be any comparison between the children of Yishmael and Yaakov Avinu? Well, to note, Shebeshmois Rabba Reish Parsim Shpatim, the Medrash Rabba in Chumash Mois, at the beginning of Parsim Shpatim, Shesham Huva Haklal B'chol Makom Shekasav Ve'ela Mois Val Rishonim, that over there is the place that's brought down this principle, this rule, that when it says Ve'ela, when a Vav HaMoisif, it comes to continue and add to what it said earlier. And the Medrash Rabbah obviously addresses that the beginning of Pars Mishpatim, it doesn't say Eila HaMishpatim Asher Tasim Lefneim, rather it says Ve'eila HaMishpatim Asher Tasim Lefneim, and these are the Mishpatim that you should place before them. And the Medrash Rabbah, because of discussing how over there it's adding and a continuation to what it said earlier, so the same thing, it says this principle that all over whenever it says ve'ela, it comes to add. So the Medrash Rabbah over there speaks about our pasuk. So he says in line 14, Mefarish Mashakosav ve'ela told us Yitzchak. He explains what it says, and these are the offspring of Yitzchak. Shemoisif ala rishonim. It's adding and continuing what it said earlier. Al Mashakosav lamayla hemenu b'nei Yishmael. Because it says prior to that, this is what the Medrash says, the children of Yishmael, Shalakach nemar toildos Yitzchak chaser, the way the word toildos is spelled over here is missing a vav. The second vav is missing. Why is the second toildos, the second vav in toildos missing? Lahoitzi Yaakov mechlal harashoim, to exclude Yaakov. Yaakov is not included in this ve'ela toildos. Therefore, when it says ve'ela toildos, it's only referring to Esav. That's why it's missing the vav, because Yaakov is not in that category of Yishmael and Esav. Hainoshai Safi rak legabe Esav lo legabe Yaakov. This addition that we're saying ve'ela toildos Yitzchak, that it's a continuation of the toildos of Yishmael, that it's all in the same category, is because Esav, not because of Yaakov. Yaakov is not in the mix. He's not possible to be called ve'ela, an addition, a continuation of Yishmael. That is the way the Medrash explains it. But the Rebbe says that's all fine in the Medrash's learning of this pasuk. But Rashi is not excluding Yaakov from the word toildos. So the Rebbe continues in line 18. It's impossible to explain this way in the explanation of Rashi. Rashi is explaining in the simple meaning of the text that the Eila toildos Yitzchak is not just referring to Esav. Not like the Medrash is saying it's only referring to Esav, and then you could say ve'ela, it's a continuation. Yaakov is not learning that way pshat. I'm sorry, Rashi is not learning that way pshat. Rashi is learning pshat that Yaakov and Esav and Yaakov is included. If Esav and Yaakov is included, so how could it be a continuation? Hainu, line 21, Yaakov, not only is he including Yaakov, ela adrab, even more so, Shemagdim es Yaakov le'Esav. He says Yaakov before Esav, even though Esav was born first. I'm sorry, even though Esav is the Bechor and so on. So he says, even though he's talking about the offspring of Yitzchak, and Esav was born first, still in all, Rashi chooses to put Yaakov in first. He says Yaakov Esav ha'amurim beparsha. Umezem muvan sheYaakov hu ikir gam legabe inyan de ve'ela moisval rishonim. From the fact that Rashi puts in Yaakov first, that means that Yaakov is the primary one, even in the phrase ve'ela toildos, which means that's a continuation of what it said earlier about the Bnei Yishmael. Ve'einem muvan echshayach loymar sheYaakov moisef al Yishmael. It's not understood. How is it possible to say that Yaakov is something additional to continuing the level of Yishmael? It's explained concerning this. Al pi Maimer Azal, according to what the Chazal say, like Avram sheyatzu menu Yishmael. It says, not like Avram, that Yishmael came out from him. Not like Yitzchak, that Esav came out from him, but like Yaakov, that mitase shlema, that all of his children were tzaddikim. So the Rebbe brings down that there's an idea of Yotza Memenu Yishmael. Before you could have Yitzchak Yishmael had to exit him, leave him. It's a type of birur. It's a refinement. Similarly, Esav had to be Yotza, had to be go out from Yitzchak. It's a type of removing of like a klippa to be able to allow for Yaakov to come forth. So he's saying in line 28, just like it was necessary that first Yishmael should go out, so that Yitzchak should come out refined, purified. So too Esav had to be born first, had to come out first, so Yaakov should come out refined with the clip already separated from him. Aval alpiz. So that's what we could say, that this is the addition. In other words, he's saying ve'ela moisef al rishonim. He's coming to tell you, just like Yishmael was part of the process that Yitzchak should come out refined, so ve'ela told us Yitzchak in a similar vein, so that Yaakov should come out refined. Yitzchak had to first have an Esav, had to come out from him. So that's the ve'ela told us moisif al rishonim. Just like Yishmael came out of Avram, so too Yitzchak had Esav. Esav came out from him. So the Rebbe says even this explanation of the ve'ela told us how it's moisif al rishonim is not that smooth. So he says the end of line 29 of al pizeh, but according to this, this addition that we're saying ve'ela moisef al rishonim shegam mi Yitzchak yatsa Esav k'dei sheyetzi Yaakov naki, just like Yishmael had to leave Avram so that Yitzchak should come out pure. Same thing, ve'ela told us Yitzchak that Esav had to come out first so that Yaakov should come out pure. Einoi mal yusa, top of page with base. This is not an advantage. It's not a good thing. Getting rid of the bad and the negative and the klippa is not a positive thing. V'lo yutztak al zeh ve'ela moisif, and the words ve'ela moisif is not so ve'ela, which means that it's additioning, that's an addition to. The word ve'ela is not so appropriate. Shu ktsas lagnai. It has a bit of a negative component to it, because we're saying, just like Avram had to get the Yishmael out, Yitzchak had to get the Esav out. It's like a negative thing. Avshem Esayim b'shvach, though the conclusion is a positive thing, sheyotza hazuma, that the dirt left, k'dei sheyetzi Yaakov nochi, so Yaakov should come out pure. So the Rebbe is not comfortable with this alternate explanation that ve'ela means to say, just like Yishmael had to leave Avram, so Yitzchak should come out pure, Esav had to leave Yitzchak, so that Yaakov should come out pure. It doesn't feel right to say that and these are the offspring of Yitzchak is going to be like, oh, Yitzchak had to deal with negativity like Avram had to deal with negativity. The Rebbe doesn't feel comfortable with that explanation. So the Rebbe says an alternate explanation, line 4 on page Yud Beis. The idea behind this is, like he explains in the Torah, the Tzemach Tzedek, Shenira Yosek, Meshapirish, B'zah Rav Choster, Rav Nachum Zal Chernobyl, B'Sefer, and Me'orenayim. To make that it seems more likely, like the explanation of Rav Nachum Chernobyl in his Sefer called Me'orenayim, Be'inin Ve'ela Toldis, he writes on Ve'ela Toldis, Havav Moisif, the letter Vav, adds. What's it mean it adds? It increases. Hainu shemoisif umarchiv gvul hakdusha. It adds and broadens and increases the boundary of kedusha, how far kedusha reaches. When you extract and refine the holy sparks from Klippa, Umayla oisam likol b'kedusha, and you elevate them to become included in holiness. So then what happens is you have more kedusha area, if you will. That's what it means. These are the offspring. Yaakov Esav Amur Parsha Yaakov and Esav that is told about on the upcoming Parsha Dahain. Shade Yaakov through Yaakov who mevarer games bechinas Esav umayla memenu nitzoytze hagdusha. Yaakov is one that refines also the level of Esav and extracts from Esav the sparks of kedusha. According to this, we could explain. And these, the letter Vav is coming to tell you that it's to add over the earlier ones. Shemoisif al Toldus Yishmael, it's adding and increasing over the offspring of Yishmael. Yaakov mevarer games bechinas Yishmael, that Yaakov also refines the level of Yishmael. So that's the Ve'ela. We know that Yaakov's job is to be mevarer Esav. Ve'ela Moisif, Ve'ela and Smoisv al Rishonim, that Yaakov is also here, not just to be mevarer Esav, but to add also in the realm of Kedusha Yishmael's level. Why is Yaakov dealing with Yishmael? Because Yaakov has something unique. Yaakov is only Yaakov, the chosen one of the forefathers. He's the only of the others that all his children were tzaddikim. All of Nemar, and concerning Yaakov, it says, Yaakov that Yaakov left Eretz Yisrael and he went to Charon Nafshel Olam. What the Medrash uses the term, the anger of Hashem in the world. In other words, a very low spiritual place. And what was the purpose that Yaakov went to Charan, Lifel Shama Birur, to refine the sparks in Charan? Va'ad shebirer gam Esav as Esav Yishmael. He refined through that also Esav, and he refined Yishmael, Kenisker La'el, like we mentioned earlier about the Nekuda of the Segel. Shabirur, the Esav Yishmael, the refinement of Esav and Yishmael. Shekoil as Abirur, the Chalshivma Umis, it includes the refinement of all the 70 nations who klolos birur shtei on Nekudas Chesed Gvura. It's the general refinement of the 2 points of Chesed and Gvura, Chesed being the clip of Yishmael, and Gvura is the clip of Esav. The segel, through the dot below of the segel. That's the idea of bittul. And then until it rises up to the point of the segel that is higher than both. So therefore, that is why it says ve'ela. And because moisif, the moisif, what does it mean? It's adding to the realm of Kedusha. It's not only adding Esav to the realm of Kedusha, but it's also adding Yishmael to the realm of Kedusha. So it is a continuation. Yishmael that we spoke about earlier, and Esav that we're speaking about in our parsha, all of these are in one in one pot that Yaakov Avinu's job is, and Yaakov Avinu accomplishes to elevate and refine them like the bittul of the dot under the 2 dots of the segel until it becomes entirely transformed and elevated completely. We'll stop over here.